I think one of the last things that you said on the fact that fraud and the operational processes that you set around it really helps you prevent this value leak. I think that's a good segue into understanding a very key aspect of this business. That is, we all always think about NBFCs or any other banking services or financial services companies as that all of their PNL is decided directly by their product and how it's shaped, right? Although to a certain extent that is true, but we often overlook the entire operational aspect behind it on what gets you to the top line as well as the bottom line. So would love to understand for you, for Navdhan, how do you look at operations as a key contributing factor to ensure that you meet your top line as well as your bottom line targets?
Well, three bullet points, Shogata. One is uh, we need to overall, while we design any workflow, we need to look at reducing cost to serve or cost to achieve the objective of that workflow. The second is you have an input in terms of time, energy, money, more importantly, energy, which is very transient in an organization, right? So it's not just so people talk about time and money, but it's the energy which matters. So improvement in that efficiency, your input output ratio. And then the sum total of the two should allow you to improve profit margins. I was speaking about, offering the same customer lower margin products. But if you're offering him lower margin products without incremental cost, you're actually enhancing your profit margins. While somebody offering that service standalone itself will not, make a dent. People who have serviced dairy industry through agri fintechs have never survived because standalone it's extremely expensive to offer that service. But if you have that as a component of your overall service proposition, then your ability to price it comes from your ability to get a cost advantage, right? So operations is all about achieving efficient operations, and excellence is all about iteratively improving it to achieve that last optimal, which is a utopia. So therefore you need to keep continuously optimizing. And this is where both, tech as well as people would play a role. People have to be accepting change. So I think the interplay of the three, reduction in cost to serve, improvement in efficiency, and enhanced margins, eventually resulting into enhanced profitability profile of the enterprise, is where it boils down to.
That's a good take on this. I think working towards reducing costs is definitely one of the key aspects of operations. Also, wanted to know if you have any thoughts about how operations for an entity like Navdhan can actually lead to, say, the top line growth. Can it have a direct or maybe an indirect effect of driving your top line upwards, whether it be through different levers like better customer experience or any other um, areas that you can speak to us about?
Sure. So for this, I'll stick to only lending operations to answer this. So we have just two parts in lending. One is disbursement, the other is collections. लोन बांटना है, लोन वापस लाना है. बस ये दो फंडामेंटल एक्टिविटीज हैं. लोन बांटने के लिए what is the input I use? I have a person who's a customer service officer who's allocated to a set of PIN codes and who has a certain amount of time on hand in which he does customer interactions. How can tech improve the quality of customer interactions, track it to achieve? So there are two things. One is the guy has to be working, so we have to track the person. The second is when he's working, his time and result from that time has to be good. So these are the two factors which play there, which means that you give him so much of automation in his hand that with what he could achieve with a 1 hour discussion with the customer, he could achieve with just 1 minute discussion with the customer. And how do you keep reducing this? So 1 hour reduced to 1 minute is utopian, but 1 hour reduced to 50 minutes, then 40 minutes is a mindset. How do you quickly achieve that? And then there will be friction of all sorts. There'll be friction of connectivity. There'll be friction of, running synchronous and asynchronous operations. There'll be friction of uh, workflow design where you can't go to the next stage unless the first stage is crossed. And therefore, how many times a workflow is asking you to hit the database, right? And come back and ask for a response. So therefore, at the disbursement end, I would say the efficiency of the customer service officer who's going to be interacting with the customer and building customer interfaces in such a manner that they consume less and less time and achieve more and more outcomes. Similarly, at the collections end, the collections drop-offs is the single biggest problem in any lending business. And Rohit did kind of allude to it earlier. How do you create anchors so that you can catch hold of the customer when the drop-offs have happened? Have you built enough monitoring processes? Geotags work, they don't work. Massive failure rates of geotags. I mean, I would have presumed that they work well, but when I myself go on the field and I try and test my geotags, they fail more often than they work, right? So some of these very obvious solutions to somebody using it, I used Urban Clap in the morning for some service, and I didn't have to bother because with the geo link, he came to my house and delivered the service and went back. But that's not possible in rural areas, right? So how do you build redundancies in your processes, backups in your processes, such that you're able to have a business continuity? You're able to get to the customer, you're able to find his alternative phone numbers, you're able to catch hold of him at the right place at the right time so that you get your money back. Becomes a very important. So two aspects: disbursements, collections. And in both of them, this plays a very, very critical role.
And Nitin, maybe one of the other things also, we alluded to in different shapes and forms throughout the conversation, but on similar lines, right? We spoke about customer success, we spoke about scalability, we discussed like profitability. When you think about risk, think about fraud, you think about the less sunshine and fun parts of financial services, right? What role does operations technology play here? Would love to hear some examples also of some of the more interesting or devious ways in which you've seen, not just at Navdan but overall as well, where you've seen attempts at fraud, you've seen things go wrong in certain places with compliance, and how you can sort of like think about that. And in this day and age where fraud is getting complicated, where people are using AI to like deep fake even things like a video KYC, right? Like, how do you think about staying a little bit ahead of the curve on these aspects?
Well, I think there are two ways to prevent fraud. One is at the design element, you try to imagine where things can go wrong and you try to plug those holes. And at places you build maker, checker, verifier, facilities. That is one way to look at it. The second way to look at it is what we call as hindsighting, which is when a trail of transactions has happened and you trail back and invest substantive time to trail back on transactions and see where possibly things could have gone wrong and where things would have slipped. It may not have resulted in a fraud, but there may have been some slippages somewhere, and therefore have a dedicated team to do that. So I have a dedicated team which is called hindsighting team, and its full-time job is to backtrail the transactions and keep checking and testing where things could have gone wrong. And therefore, that becomes an input for the foresighting team. Foresighting team then dovetails into the product function, which allows you to kind of improve on your processes.
Got it. Got it.
That's one. The second is when you observe one such thing, you also need to build a culture for it. And when I say culture, there is this concept of zero tolerance to some of this slippages. And I'm not saying this because it's written on the slide here. What happens is if you have a high tolerance, you can have high tolerance for mistakes. But if you have a high tolerance for certain behavioral aspects which allude towards potential fraud, then you should not have any tolerance to it. Cut it out right then. These are cancerous cells which need to be killed. There is just no other way out. So, and labor laws offer you enough opportunities to terminate people for cause. So rather probably, I may sound very rude in it, but that's the reality of life. Cut the crap when you see a crap. You should not hold on to the crap. You should try and prevent further crap, but cut the crap is extremely, extremely important.